I get tired of these criticisms of the president. You're focused too much on foreign policy, not enough on domestic policy. What are they talking about? This guy's got hundreds of executive orders, reversing regulations, tax cuts, the border, on and on. I said, you know what? Last Saturday, I explained on this issue of affordability that blue states are unaffordable and red states are affordable. And Republicans need to run on that. But what about the people in these states, Mark? What about it? The President of the United States is President of the United States. He's not running the local pizzeria. He's not running the local grocery store and all the rest of it. There are things he can do and things he can't do, but there are things he's doing like we've never seen before. I think he's doing more than FDR ever did at the height of the New Deal, and it's only 8-9 months in. Let's look at this. He is the general in the culture war. He's the general in making domestic moves that no president has made, certainly not in our lifetime. And what am I talking about? He's defunding DEI. He's removing it from federal policy, and he's removing it from state and local policy in colleges and universities that receive federal funds. He's depoliticizing the left-wing anti-American rewrite of our founding and history that's taking place in federally funded museums and national parks, which are promoting hard left ideology. He's removing left-wing directives that were coming out of our education department, the local school districts, K through 12 classes. He's doing the same thing. He's fighting hard when it comes to higher education. In fact, he's dismantling the Department of Education, something that President Reagan wanted to do desperately, and he was blocked by who? The Republicans in the Senate. Trump's doing it with the help of his excellent education secretary. He's promoting school choice like no president in American history. Options, particularly for poor people, particularly for poor minorities. He's withholding federal education funds for leftist agendas, indoctrination being pushed in our schools. He is fighting hard, and again, using federal dollars as a whip to prevent men from going into women's sports, boys from going into girls' sports. That was supposed to be protected under Title IX of the Civil Rights Act. He has defunded PBS, a left-wing operation. He has defunded NPR, a left-wing operation. And why do we need him? You got 1,200 channels on cable, and you got hundreds and hundreds and thousands of stations on radio. If they're that great, let them get private funding. He has locked down the border. Literally locked down the border. He's enforcing immigration laws against Democrat mayors, Democrat governors, who are the new Confederates, who are trying to nullify federal law. He's trying to deport illegal aliens, especially the worst of the worst. He's appointing originalists to the federal bench to try and counter what Biden did, which is basically destroy the judiciary with activist left-wing lawyers. He's rebuilding America's infrastructure and industrial base through tax cuts, regulation cuts, and yes, tariffs. And by the way, his tax cuts are for all Americans, including on tips, Social Security benefits, overtime, middle-class income earners, and small businesses. What else? Revolutionary changes over there at the Department of HHS, in our federal health agencies, extensive reform of welfare programs, including expanding work requirements, major overhaul of the student loan programs, including capping them, a complete overhaul of radical left-wing degrowth environmental rules over at the EPA, massive expansion of domestic energy production, including opening more land for drilling, speeding up permitting for energy projects, reevaluating or rescinding regulations seen as burdensome to domestic energy production. His administration has recently issued executive orders, signed legislation, provided financial support aimed at significant expansion of U.S. nuclear capacity. I think this is one of the great answers to energy in the United States of America. He's authorizing mining for all materials, especially rare earth materials, and we see it bearing fruit in Alaska and in Pennsylvania, including expediting permitting, prioritizing mineral extraction on federal lands, as well as using the Defense Production Act to fund projects and reduce dependence on foreign sources like China. He's consistently promoting policies aimed at massively expanding U.S. artificial intelligence. He's got the commitment of investments of trillions of dollars in this so we stay ahead of China. Because this is the new frontier, like it or not. And technology growth through deregulation, increased R&D investment, public-private partnerships, workforce training. Mark, where'd you get it all? I pulled it off the internet. I looked at all these different sites, pulled it together, and said, what do they mean he's not focusing on domestic activities? Are you kidding me? He's expanding U.S. timber production on federal lands. He's streamlining permitting processes. He's reduced regulations with a goal of a 25% increase in production. These actions were aimed at cutting red tape, expediting logging, salvaging operations, purportedly to reduce wildlife risks and boost the domestic industry. Hey, Newscomb, you could learn something from this. Pay attention. Reducing regulations and opening previously protected areas to commercial fishing, aiming to boost the domestic economy and compete with foreign imports of fish. What about farming? Enhancing farming. The enhanced crop insurance, expedited and expanded disaster assistance, market access and trade deals with countries in Asia and Western Hemisphere, particularly China, aiming to remove tariff and non-tariff barriers and expand market access for U.S. agricultural products overseas, like ethanol, soybeans, poultry, deregulating the agriculture industry, and overturning climate-related regulations that lower farmer input costs. Even the cost of fertilizer was prohibitive. Now he's bringing it down. What else? He's expanding ranching, primarily by increasing access to federal grazing lands, expanded grazing access, financial support with more government-guaranteed loans, and expand access to capital for producers, predator compensation for livestock. You know, we've been protecting predator species for forever, and obviously it has an effect on the livestock. Increasing funding for small meat processors, reduction of inspection fees, because he wants more production. Remove unfair tariff and non-tariff barriers and create fair and reciprocal trade, expanding opportunities for U.S. exports. That's what's meant by reciprocal trade deals when he talks about them. He's pursued various actions aimed at lowering medical and prescription drug costs through executive orders, price transparency rules, and voluntary pricing agreements with manufacturers, capping out-of-pocket insulin costs for participating Medicare beneficiaries at no more than $35 a month for a month's supply, initiatives at the Food and Drug Administration to speed up the approval of lower-cost generic medicines and biosimilars, which are often significantly cheaper than the brand name alternatives. States can now legally import lower-cost prescription drugs, if it can be done safely, from Canada. What else has the president done domestically? Oh, I don't know. He's focused so much on foreign affairs. Executive orders on deregulation, signed executive orders directing federal agencies to identify and remove unnecessary administrative expenses and rent-seeking practices that drive up housing costs and impede new development. He signed into law an expansion of low-income housing tax credits, a program that incentivizes private investors to build affordable rental housing. Federal land development. He supports plans to make federally owned land available for new housing development. And of course, what he really needs is for the Fed to get its ass in gear and to significantly lower interest rates, as they should. And he's been pounding on the Fed and pounding on Powell and telling him, you're killing the housing market. I'm doing everything I can from a fiscal perspective. You need to act from a monetary perspective and lower interest rates. In the initial months of his second term, real inflation, adjusted wages for blue-collar workers saw a significant increase, contrasting with negative real wage growth observed during the first part of the Biden regime when inflation was high. Now, what else is he doing? Education is a disaster. The president knows this, and he's been working on it. Against the teachers' unions, against the Democrats in Congress, against Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, against this massive industrial education complex that is in place. They take your tax dollars at the federal level. They take your property tax dollars at the state level. And what do? We don't want parental involvement. We don't want school choice competition. We're in charge. Pushing a leftist ideology every step of the way. And the results are seen. And Trump says, wait a minute. No more. We got to fix this. What is he doing? In K through 12, he is ending the radical indoctrination of our students. It's being monitored, it's being fought, and he's being opposed every step of the way. School choice and vouchers, the proposed Education Freedom Scholarships and Opportunity Act, by allowing tax-free withdrawals from 529 education saving plans for a K through 12 cost. So you can take that money out of money you put aside for college and university at one day, which your kids may never use for that, or you may not, and apply it to school choice at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels. School discipline. Reinstate common sense school discipline policies that focus on objective behavioral misconduct rather than DEI principles. Thank you, Obama. Parental empowerment. The administration has supported policies aimed at giving parents more control over their children's education and school options. Higher education. Dismantling the Department of Education. It's going on right now under a great Secretary of Education. And that means transferring many of its functions to other agencies, block granting funding to the states, that sort of thing. That has been a desire of conservatives and Republicans since the late 1970s, when this monstrosity was created as a gift to the NEA and the AFT, and this is the first president, the only president, to actually do something about it. As I said, ending DEI and affirmative action, the Department of Education removed or archived hundreds of guidance documents and web pages related to DEI, and they directed schools to comply with the Supreme Court decision that ended affirmative action in college admissions. Accreditation reform. Initiatives were proposed to reform the higher education accreditation process to encourage a competitive marketplace and potentially lower college courses. You know, we conservatives, I for one, these are things I have supported and advocated for decades. And you know where they went? Nowhere. They were on white papers. They were in seminars. They were in debates. This man, Trump, is actively enforcing these ideas, these principles, these proposals, trying to get America back from the hard left. That's what it is. I love it when they say, look what he's doing. He's imposing his will. He's attacking free speech and academic. No, he's not. He said, enough is enough. You radical left-wing kooks, you don't own the country. You don't own the culture. You don't own the government. No, it's time for patriotic Americans to take their government back, and I, Donald Trump, will take the lead, and that's what he's doing. Combating anti-Semitism and foreign influence. This is very important. This administration has taken measures to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses, increase transparency requirements for foreign gifts and influence at American universities. We need to do much more in this regard. The prior regime was doing next to nothing. And we need more from the Republicans in Congress, too. You know, we don't want a dictator. Well, neither does Trump. Neither do I. Neither do any of these constitutional conservatives. But we would like you guys in Congress to participate a little bit more, maybe. That would help. That's not that you're doing a bad job. We just need to ramp it up. Student loans. Actions have included attempts to limit eligibility and cap borrowing for some federal student loan programs. They blew the lid off this. They federalized it. It is a massive swamp of abuse, of spending, and so forth and so on. And Trump's trying to pull it back as he should. And as also this public service loan forgiveness. They've been looking at that very carefully. This is a $1 trillion entity with massive abuse that's taking place. And you and I are now on the hook because Obama basically nationalized it, killed all the privatization. Trump's trying to bring back some of the privatization and so forth in competition and get control over it. Transgender athletes in sports. I hit this very quickly. An order. Keeping men out, executive order, keeping men out of women's sports, prohibits educational institutions receiving federal funds from allowing transgender women to compete in women's sports categories. You know, I would say 10 years ago, this would be, excuse me, what's going on? And so this president says, no, we're going to fight these things. You know, Biden was all in. His people were all in. He said no. Continued significant support by this president for historically black colleges and universities through a White House initiative. Folks, I could go on and on and on. This president has been focused on domestic policy, on foreign policy. He knows he's got one term left. He's got about 3 years left, despite what some of the kooks are saying. One term left. And he's doing everything he can. This is why this midterm election is so crucial.